What is it that sets the pros apart when it comes to playing incredible solos? Well, a big part of it is that they're going beyond simply playing scales and memorized licks. Great guitar players are actually tying everything they play into the chords that they're playing over. And in this video, I'm going to show you an easy and approachable way to start doing that yourself by using CAGED to unlock the simple pentatonic scale you already know. By the way, all the graphics and fretboard diagrams from this lesson will be available over on my Patreon for you to download as a nice little cheat sheet. Link will be at the top of the description. Now, you only need to know the very basics of CAGED to understand this lesson, but if you want a deeper dive, I'll link my full guide to the CAGED system for beginners in the description below. So you know that you can use these shapes to play other chords. For example, I can use this C major shape to play an F major chord. And I know that this is an F major chord because I use my root note as my guiding point, and the root note of this chord is this note right here, and this note is an F note. We can even modify these shapes to play minor chords as well. For example, if I were to use an A shape to play a D major chord, I can modify just one note and it becomes a minor chord. Now we've got D minor. We can do this with all 5 of the CAGED shapes. However, some of them are a little bit awkward and uncomfortable. Okay, let's step away from chords for a second and talk about our scale. So we're gonna be sticking to the tried and true position 1 of the A minor pentatonic scale, which looks like this. So since this scale shape starts on this A note right here, that means that we're in the key of A minor. That's why this is an A minor pentatonic scale. But thanks to something called relative major and minor scales, this is actually also in another key as well. So wherever our pinky is in this shape on the low E string, that is our relative major key. So not only is this an A minor pentatonic, this is technically also a C major pentatonic. And this is because the key of A minor and the key of C major contain all the same notes. So this is great because this one shape in this one position can actually cover both major keys and minor keys. Now our next step here is to flesh out our pentatonic scale and turn it back into the scale that it actually comes from. So a pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale, and it comes from a corresponding major or minor scale. So we're gonna keep it simple and always relate everything back to the major scale. So that means when we're in this position, we're gonna say that this is from C major. So the C major scale has C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Those are the 7 notes of the C major scale. If we were to start this same scale from the 6th note, so from that A, that would give us an A minor scale. The notes themselves wouldn't change. We would just be starting at a different point. So a pentatonic scale is just removing 2 of the notes from our full 7-note scale. So it gets rid of notes 4 and 7, but we'll need to keep them in there because you're gonna need access to every single one of these notes, and you're gonna see why in a little bit. So what we need to do is we need to build out our full shape. So our new fleshed out shape, this is gonna now be a C major or A minor scale, looks like this. So that was our scale shape. Now we're gonna shift back over to chords. And chords within a key actually just come from the major scale. So we were using the C major scale there. Well, that also gives us all of our chords. So if we look at the C major scale, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. We give all of those a number and we apply something called the major minor formula. And that's gonna tell us that chords 1, 4, and 5 are major, 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and 7 is diminished. So this means that any combination of these chords is a chord progression in the key of C major or A minor. Now that also means that our C major / A minor shape is gonna sound awesome played over any combination of these chords. So if I were to play something like C major, G major, A minor, and F major, any notes from that scale shape would all sound good over top of those chords. Now, because of the CAGED system, we can actually locate all 7 of our chords from within the key right inside this one position major / minor scale. So let's start with the first chord. That's the C major chord. That right here is gonna come from a G major shape. Now, this is a terrible shape to play, But what we can do is we can reduce it down to just the 3 most important notes. And there's a few different places where you can get these 3 notes. You can do it a few different ways. You could do like that. The one I like to do is this one. Those are my 3 notes right there from this chord, from my 1 chord. Now we can go to our 2 chord, which is a D minor. That chord is right here, just a basic D minor bar chord, right? Again, right on top of that position. And we can reduce that down into a little triad as well. We can play it like this, or if we want, we can even play it like this. It doesn't really matter. The next one is an E minor, our 3 chord. And this is the one that's maybe a little bit more on the awkward side, because typically you'd probably play an E minor by playing that same shape for the D minor and just moving it up 2 frets, but then we get outside of our shape. The only other shape that works is a modified C shape, so turning our C shape from CAGED into a minor chord. But because of the way our fingers work, we can really only play these 3 notes here. That works for our triad anyway. That gives us all 3 important notes for the E minor chord. Then we've got our F major chord. This one is just based on a C major shape. Like that, again, right in this position. And there's, again, a few ways we can play the full triad, the F major triad. So we can do this one. We can also do this one, or this one. Totally up to you. I really like this one. It's a lot of fun, or this one. But again, it's totally up to you. Now next we have our G major chord, our 5 chord, and that one can just be played with a D shape. So that's this right here. Very awkward to play the whole thing, so we just reduce it down into a little 3-note version, and it's this little D shape. Again, living right inside this position. Then we get to our 6th chord, which is a very important chord because it is our relative minor, and that is an A minor. And that just comes from our very basic E minor bar chord shape. It's an A minor chord. And if we would just want to play the 3-note triad, we cannot play the lowest 3 strings because we get root, 5th, root again before we get to our 3rd. So if you want to also have the 3rd in there, you'd have to play it like this, or like this, or like this. My favorite one, that's kind of my go-to. That's the one I like the most. Now our final chord in this key is a B diminished. You're honestly not going to use it that often, but I'm going to show you a little shape just so that you have the entire thing. So what we're going to do for the full shape here, it's based on an E minor shape, but on the B here, but we make all these little adjustments. And this is actually a B minor 7 flat 5 is the way that it works for it to be diatonic. It looks like this. But we reduce that down to just a diminished triad, a B diminished triad. And this one's a little bit awkward because it's this note, and then that note up there, you skip the D string. Again, you're not going to use it a lot, but it's important to just know anyway. Now, what is the point of knowing all this? How do you actually apply it? Well, this is what separates an average player from a pro. When you're improvising or writing a solo with this scale, you're going to start highlighting the chord tones of the chords that you're playing over. So we're going beyond just playing the notes from the key and instead paying attention to those chord changes. So as each chord comes by, obviously you're gonna have to actually know the chord progression. It can be very helpful to just write it down so it's in front of you as you're learning this. You're gonna be trying to hit and highlight some of, 1 of, 2, 3, whatever, of the chord tones from that chord. And then as the next chord comes by, you're gonna do the same thing for the next one, and then tie those chord tones together with other notes from the scale. So I want to show you an example of this over an actual track, but before I do that, I just kind of want to explain what I'm going to be doing. So the chord progression here, we're only going to use the first little section of the song. It goes from an F major to an A minor to a C major. We're in the key of C major / A minor. So we've got F major first, so I'm going to find my little F major triad in there. That one's a good one. Then the next one, we've got A minor, so we've got this one right here. Then we go to C major, and we just go to this one here. So again, so as each chord goes by here, I'm just gonna make sure I hit a note from each shape over each chord. And then with the rest of my time, I'm just gonna use the A minor / C major full scale shape. So we're gonna start simple and just hit one note from each chord here as it goes by. Like this. And then we can just kind of start playing around once you feel comfortable. Now, obviously, this is one of those things that you're gonna wanna take step by step. Start off and keep it really simple. That's one of the reasons I like to keep it all in just that one position to start, because even that honestly can be a little bit overwhelming. But don't worry about filling the space with too many notes. Focus on just hitting those chord changes and the chord tones at that point, and the rest will come as you become more and more comfortable. The great thing is, over time, you're gonna be able to build this out. So there are these little triad shapes and chord shapes that use CAGED that cover the entire fretboard, all 5 of the pentatonic positions. Well, they're all covered with this stuff, and over time you can learn all of that stuff. It's pretty cool. If you want to try doing this with some songs that are in a different key, just remember that in that position 1 shape, that first finger, wherever that is your relative minor key. This pinky finger, whichever note that is your relative major key. So if you see that a song is in the key of D major, well, just take your pinky, put that on a D note right here. You'd be doing everything in the key of D major / B minor. Or if the song was in the key of G minor, well, take that pointer finger, find a G note, put your shape down, and that's gonna give you all of this stuff in the key of G minor / B flat major. From here, you should go watch my lesson on the second most important scale shape you need to master. If you wanna check it out, I'm gonna put a link up in the middle of the screen for you. If you wanna help support the channel, Patreon and my beginner intermediate guitar course are gonna be linked at the top of the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.